I'm going to talk about my Michael Teachings chart. So Michael Teachings is this awesome system that it's all channeled. So the information was originally channeled, and it's all the knowledge from the system comes from a being that's on higher planes. It's a collective being of 1,000 souls that are working together, that are teaching us this information about how we form our lives and our lifetimes, across our whole reincarnational cycle. So, in the system, they talk about our like soul types, and that we maintain for the whole cycle, and then we progress through these different stages called the soul ages. And in each life that we have, we take on different overleaves, which are different qualities that we take on for different lessons for each life that we set up. So it's a really interesting system if you don't know about it already. But yeah, I'm going to get into the details of my chart, so you guys can understand a little bit more about me. So my role overall is scholar. That's my soul type. And the scholars are the ones that study and seek knowledge. So they want to like digest information and knowledge as much as like they just like crave it so much. Like when they have an interest in something, they want to just delve deeply into it. If it's through reading something, reading a certain subject, or exploring things more with their bodies, like maybe a certain hobby or interest that they have out in the world, actually being hands-on with something so they can really understand something. Because their purpose overall for out of the 7 roles is to be the one that has the resource and the knowledge about different topics or different things that they're interested in. So that's like their main drive, is to seek knowledge and to share that with other people as a resource. They can have different interests and a lot of different hobbies. That's a really common thing for scholars. So I have like my music and stuff, and my graphic design stuff I do, different things like that. But overall, the scholar allows me with the one input. There's different inputs for each of the types, which is how much where you can bring in different information from different places. But I only have one input as a scholar, which means I can laser focus on a certain thing at a time, which allows me to like read a book and just like really get into it without being distracted or whatever I'm focused on. So yeah, that's what the scholar is all about. My essence twin, which is the soul that I bond with for my inner lessons. Everybody has a soul twin, essence twin, um, except for the few people who choose not to have one for their cycle. Most people do have one, and mine's a sage. They're male, and I have no plans to meet them, so they're in their own life right now. They could be discarnate, and with certain people on certain people's charts, they'll be discarnate, but sometimes they're incarnate. So what that means for me is I don't have as much sage energy as I would if they were discarnate, because when they're discarnate, their energy kind of rides your shoulders, and you kind of get a boost of that energy overall. So the sage energy is all about communication and communicating insight and wisdom, but they also have a humorous element to them, which is part of their communication and their flair and their personality. So they have kind of strong personalities, in terms of how they express themselves. So a lot of them become like actors, or they might be attracted to theater, or they like performing as a musician, or different things like that. They love to be on stage. They love to be in front of people, communicating with people and communicating insight, or funny things, being a comedian, different things like that. But for me, what that really signifies that I chose a sage essence twin is that I wanted to help my own seeking of knowledge as a scholar, and supplement that with kind of a flair for communication, and communicating insight and wisdom overall. But also gives me kind of connection to expression overall, which can be through the arts in different ways and performing. So that's really interesting to see. And so let's get into some of the other stuff here. Cadence position, cadence and creator cadence deal with where you're placed in your entity. And an entity is a group of 1,000 souls. That's your soul family. So each of those are just basically different parts that are signifying different aspects of like where you're placed in the soul family, and you take on characteristics of wherever you're placed. So I've got scholar cadence position. So that kind of reinforces more of the scholar energy. It's just like doubled up. So I'm even more scholar-like than other scholars would be because I have that. And then my cadence is artisan. So I have some extra qualities there that brings in more creativity overall. So that the artisan is really sensitive overall. It's the most sensitive type. They're very creative. They like working with their hands. And that really kind of shows me like why I might be more attracted to like graphic design, for example, and music. You know, having more of a creative flair to me is because I have this artisan going on. You know, my major in college was design media arts, so I was attracted to graphic design. And I've been interested in music since I was, you know, like a teenager. Since I was like 13, I've been playing music. So that's really present there. The warrior is not going to be as strong, being a greater cadence position thing. So I don't have too much warrior energy going on. But overall, what you can see for those is that I have the two expression axis types as secondary influences with the sage and artisan. So that makes me more creative. My task companion, which is another soul that I work with, is also a scholar. So they help with my external tasks in life. And they're discarnate, so they're helping me on the higher planes, on the astral plane, and helping me with all the tasks that I do. And because they're scholar, that helps with the more seeking, studying kind of energy. So I got a lot of scholar stuff going on overall. So that's a lot of the stuff in my essence. Here's some more stuff in the essence. Like I was gonna say, actually, it's the essence over here on the left is the stuff that stays the same for my whole reincarnational cycle. So all this stuff is going to stay the same in all my lives on Earth. And I'll get into the overleaves, which are more just the stuff for this life. So now I'm going to talk about my cadre and entity. A cadre is a group of 7 entities, and an entity is a group of 1,000 souls. So they're kind of like my soul family. So this comes from Shepherd Hoodwin. This chart was all channeled by Shepherd Hoodwin, and he has a certain numbering system for the cadres. But I'm in 4-7, cadre 4, entity 7. And so this is actually a king-oriented entity. So this group of 1,000 souls has more of the king energy influence, which is a lot about leadership. So there might be in my entity a lot of people who have more of this leadership kind of energy overall in how they behave and perform in the world. And so some of the people that are actually in my entity are like Kanye West, Thomas Jefferson, XXX Tentacion, and Alan Moore, and a lot of other people too. But those are some of the ones that I've actually made some videos about that you can go check out. But yeah, they're all in my soul family. So my orientation is energy. It's also called beauty. It's more of the in terms of the 3 different orientations you can have. There's love, truth, and energy. So each of those are the highest manifestation of the different kind of centering overall of the dimensions that you can experience things. So, you know, like truth is all about the intellect, the highest manifestation of intellect. Love is about the emotional dimension of things, and energy is like the body, energy, action oriented aspect of things. So what that signifies as it being in my essence is that I'm more attracted to the energetic domain of things, what I feel in my body, the energy that's actually present there. And it could signify that in a lot of my lives I'm oriented towards action and moving my body and dealing with energy and cultivating energy in my body. And this is really interesting because when I reflect on my experiences with my bipolar manic episodes, I think I've cultivated a lot of energy, primal energy that I have as part of my soul that tries to get integrated into my current life, but that I've cultivated so much that I've had to learn how to unblock my solar plexus so that I can like really allow this energy to flow through me. And I think that this happens a lot with people that have energy orientation or souls that are like the roles like warrior or king, which are the more action oriented, energy focused roles overall. So I'm noticing that like kings like Kanye West and even Trump have kind of this strong primal energy aspect. And so I think this is an aspect that I'm dealing with a lot, which is due to my energy orientation and my interest in energy overall. So that's really interesting to look at. My male female energy ratio is 41-59. So it's 41% male, 59% female. So I'm more on the female energy side. And what that really means is I'm more focused on the being dimension of things, more of a creating an environment of kind of energy and things that I'm filtering through and experiencing. It's not as directed in one direction as it would be if I was male energy dominant. So people with male energy dominant are more single point focused, going through towards goals, and they're more business oriented in general. While the people that have female energy dominant, like me, are more creative overall, and they tend to be more kind of have a spiritual edge to them, more focused on the being aspect of things. So that's interesting to look at. My frequency is 47, which is about in the middle. 50 is the middle, 100 is the top. So that means that my energy is more fluid. I'm not super solid in my energy, but I'm not super airy either. So I'm kind of in the middle road of those things. It's very normal, very kind of the average frequency that people would have. My previous cycles is 10, which means that in past lives, in past cycles, I've had 10 cycles before this cycle on Earth. So I lived on 10 different planets as different reasoning beings, like uh, beings like us, like our soul, our types of souls are more of the reasoning, have more of the reasoning faculty experience. And this is the type of souls that we are the ones that take on these roles. So I've actually been 10 different roles. I've had different overleaves and essence types for over these previous cycles on these different planets. So in this cycle on Earth, I'm a scholar, but in a previous cycle, I could have been on a different planet as like a king or as an artisan or something. So it's really interesting to look at. Some of the previous cycles of other people, like Jesus actually had 19 previous cycles, so he was like really advanced. He had a lot of experience on other planets before he came to Earth. um Hitler had 7, which isn't a ton of previous cycles, but the average on the planet is 4. So he was further along in terms of his experience than a lot of people on the planet. But I find that people's charts that I have and from friends and family and celebrities and stuff are usually around 10. I usually see 10 as the number, 10 or 11. But I've seen a lot that are like 13, 14, some 16, 17, but those are more rare. So that's kind of a little information on that. So also in Michael teachings, they have something called the raw number, which is a number that shows you where you are in terms of your entity and and it determines what your global job and community responsibility are, which are things we take on that we focus on. So like the global job is kind of like the overall job that you choose for all your lives on Earth. And my global job is salvage or salvation, which is a double priest one. So it's the most priest global job that you can choose from. And so what that is basically, they call it like spiritual counseling, but it's also like it's generally a feeling of wanting to save the planet or save people in general and bring them more towards their spiritual fulfillment, their spiritual evolution and growth. And so So that's kind of, for me, makes me want to 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 play that role for people where I can help them bring people from a stuck place into finding their spiritual essence, getting in touch with their essence and who they really are, and enabling them to live their lives effectively, in touch with who they are, and healing themselves and waking up, raising their awareness and consciousness. So that's kind of what I'm really interested in doing. But the salvage, I can see also as really a interest in saving the planet however I can. But I want to do this through interacting with people and helping people find themselves so they can live their lives according to their deepest calling. So my community responsibility is equality. So really, when I'm interacting with my community, I'm always seeing things through the lens of equality, which means I see everybody as equal in their value. So I can see that everybody has value in who they are. Everybody's, unique, and has their own unique contribution to the world and role in the world. And I really recognize that. And I really feel strongly that everybody has something important to offer, no matter where they're at or in their process, and whatever they've experienced in their past or whoever they are, they're all equally valuable. So that's kind of what's emphasized for me. So I also have the truth orientation from that raw number. So for my global job and community responsibility, I'm more focused on the truth aspect, the intellectual plane of things for that. So yeah, that's some stuff from the raw number, global job and community responsibility. And that's all the stuff in my essence. So that's all the stuff that stays the same for my whole reincarnational cycle. And now I'm going to talk about my overleaves, which is the stuff that I chose for this life only. First, I'm talking about my soul age. So the soul age is what we progress through our different lives. My soul age is mature, and I'm level 3. So the mature soul age is after the young soul age, and the young soul age is all about achievement and more of an external focus in the world, trying to achieve as much as you can and be as successful as you can. But after that, you turn inwards and focus on more internal lessons, such as your connection to yourself and who you really are on a deep level, connection to your emotions and knowing yourself emotionally, and also nurturing relationships and exploring the whole relationship dynamic and how we're related to everybody else, and how we feel connected to everybody else. So those are the big lessons I'm learning in this life and this part of my cycle, is really exploring the emotional and spiritual dimensions of things, going really deep into that and experiencing it intensely. It's a really intense period. It's actually the hardest soul age to be in out of all 5 of the ones that we go through during our reincarnational cycle. Following the mature soul age is the old soul age, where you become more detached, become more of a teacher, and you reflect on your experiences through your whole reincarnational cycle. But I'm not there yet. I'm in the middle of the mature soul age, level 3. And level 3, it's level 3 of 7. So I'm what that means is I'm all in on the mature soul age lessons at this point, but I'm still trying to integrate them in a way that I can be more confidently expressing that perspective outwardly in the world. So it's more of an introverted time for me in level 3. And I can really see that in terms of how a lot of this introverted energy from all these different systems that you can see. So yeah, now let's get on to my goal, which is dominance. So dominance is the action oriented goal that aligns with the king. So it's the king. And kings are all about being the ruler, basically. Like the dominance energy is really strong for kings. They want to be at the top, leading everybody else. And so the lessons I'm learning about in this life is about dominance, which is leadership, being the authority in my fields, or what I have to offer, and showing people the way into whatever I have to teach or show to the world. And being a scholar, it's going to be more in terms of maybe like information or knowledge, and also having the artisan and sage influence is more of the creativity aspect, which can come into my music. So what this really signifies for me is that I'm stepping into leadership roles in terms of what I'm doing, And so I can see that in my band with Holy Tears, me leading the band in terms of providing all the music, and leading with that. So what I'm doing with these systems and my channel and my teaching overall that I want to bring to the world is a representation of me stepping into this dominance goal. So that's so I'm like being aware of that is really interesting because at first when I saw my chart for the first time, I was like, "What dominance? What? I don't want to be dominant. Like I don't. That sounds scary, you know." So it's just like it took me a while to warm up to it, but like now I'm starting to feel like, oh, dominance is kind of cool. Like it's pretty cool to be able to be the the forerunner in a new field or whatever it is I do, kind of leading the way for everybody. So that's actually a really exciting thing to see that's in my chart. So I'm really excited about being in dominance, but it was scaring me at first. But yeah, if you have dominance in your chart, just know that you're supposed to be a leader in this life with whatever you do, whatever you choose to do. So my attitude for this life is stoic, which is with this. It's the server's natural attitude, and that's because it's more focused on the inner world. And so what that really does is that it it doesn't it's not so phased by what's happening in the external world. It's kind of like it's stoic about it. It's not really affected by what's happening externally. Like things can be happening, and basically my internal state and who I am and how I feel is basically unaffected by it, and I can just stay serene despite whatever's happening. So it's more focused on what's happening internally. My inner world is more of interest to me, and than whatever's happening out in the outer sense. So it's really interesting to have that with dominance because I'm focused on my inner world, and everything I'm exploring is based on what I'm exploring in my inner world. So that's really interesting to see. My mode is caution. So how I'm going about dominance is through a cautious kind of approach. And usually people who have caution mode get it because in past lives they might have been more reckless or not as careful, and so they might have made a lot of mistakes or hurt people and potentially created bad karma. Um, and so in this life, they're learning how to be more cautious and really think through things before they take action. So my energy overall when I do things is I kind of have to I have to feel through things to make sure I can really step into things confidently and appropriately. So that's kind of an influence that I have. It's kind of a weird thing too to have for dominance to be cautiously dominant, but it's interesting. So my centering is physical moving. So what that means is the centering could be either intellectual, emotional, physical, or moving. And so I have the two action oriented centerings. So physical means that I'm in touch with what my body feels like, the energy in my body, what's happening internally in a kinesthetic kind of way. I'm really in touch with how my body feels, the energy in my body, what my especially what my gut feelings tell me. I'm really in touch with what my gut says to me about whatever I'm feeling. So it's kind of tied to my intuition on a body level. Um, but yeah, it has more of an orientation towards feeling the aliveness in the body. And then the moving part is taking that energy and moving into action. So it's the energy aspect in movement, in motion, in action. So I go from feeling what I'm feeling into moving into action. So that's basically what my centering is all about. So now we'll talk about my obstacles. So I have arrogance and self-destruction. So the obstacles are the fear patterns that we all take on for each life. They're kind of like stumbling blocks that we have to overcome, and by by focusing on them, we can overcome them if we become more aware of them, and we can work with them so that they're not limiting us in the ways that they would if we didn't really deal with them. So my main one is arrogance, and this really ties to everything I've been saying in terms of kind of the introversion and shyness, because arrogance is basically a fear of being judged or of feeling vulnerable. So there's kind of like a fear that if I put myself out there, like I'm going to be judged, or potentially it feels like you're going to be killed, and maybe it could. I've heard this kind of stems from past lives where I was killed for being outspoken in a certain way, and maybe because of that, I have a fear of being exposed in the world because maybe I could get killed again. That's what it feels like, which is pretty intense. But I've learned how to overcome that feeling. And one time I was meditating and I had this feeling of embracing the ultimate scum. And that's kind of the source of that song I was talking about, Ultimate Scum. That's in my Alex Serpentine SoundCloud that you can check out. But really, what that's about is like really accepting myself on all levels so that I'm not ashamed of who I am. So, so really, that really helps to overcome the arrogance because I can be vulnerable. I can be exposed to the world. I can be judged and not feel, you know, debilitated by that in any way. So really, working with the arrogance has helped me a lot. I actually needed to overcome arrogance to even like do stuff like make my music or make these videos and share them with people. Because if I was still run by my arrogance, I would be too shy to even put myself out there. So it really helped to work with that so I can put myself out there more and connect with other people. My second obstacle is self destruction, which is about basically feeling that you're not in control and struggling with control. So there's a couple different patterns that people will take on with this. They might be like too controlling and be like too structured over themselves and trying to stay in control. So they might be too rigid and like maybe be like over disciplined. And so that's actually can be a problem because that usually results in falling out of control and kind of getting into self-destructive patterns. It's like self-sabotage because you're trying to be in control and then you just like I don't have control, and then people will get like become addicted to become alcoholics or get addicted to some kind of drug that's really destructive for themselves. um, but I felt overall how I relate to the self-destruction is sometimes I feel like I'm not actually in control of my life and I can't make the changes in my life and move in the direction that I want. And so what I've learned with that is that how to overcome this is to realize that I can take little steps forward. I know I can. There's things that I can do that are actionable and within my ability to accomplish. And by leaning on that and stepping into that, I can actually achieve what I set out to achieve, and I can orient my life in a way where I actually do have control over what I'm doing, and it builds the confidence in myself to actually have control over the direction of my life and how I'm behaving. But the thing is, you don't want to overdo the structure and the discipline because then it'll break at some point, and then you'll fall out of control and you'll get into bad habits and self-sabotaging behavior. So I've been learning a lot about that too, and I've been developing more of a sense that I do have control over my life, and that I'm able to make the right move actions in my life to get where I want to go with my life. So that's good. So it's really helpful, like to look at these obstacles and understand them and learn to overcome them because they're really limiting if they're really affecting you. So I find that's one of the most important things about the Michael teachings is to be aware of these obstacles. And I have videos on these that you can check out. The obstacles or dragons on my channel, so you can read about those. So now let's talk about my body types. I'm Saturnian and Lunar, which are the two inspiration types. Saturnian is more of a leadership oriented energy. And then Lunar is more of this internal self-reflective kind of energy. So they're kind of opposites, but they're attracted to each other naturally. But I have both of them inside me as part of my body and how my body's functioning, like the energy of my body. So it's this leadership energy paired with this reflective internal, like kind of like the moon kind of energy, very um, reflective, inner focus on the mind. It could be they often explain lunar as kind of genius, which is interesting. So I'm exploring that and seeing how that relates to me. But Saturnian is the leadership one, and that's my main one. So the last pieces on here are the quadrant, which is like what role you take in a group setting. I'm the knowledge one. So I'm the one who provides information or knowledge about something in a group setting. And then my needs are expansion, expression, and exchange. Expansion is about always growing in a certain area. It could be growing in knowledge or building, like, for example, building my YouTube channel and adding more and more to it and expanding. It could be growing in wealth. It could be growing in whatever way I can. And if I nurture that, I can continually expand my body of work or whatever I'm doing. And so that's my main need. Expression is my second one. So really expressing myself and my creativity is going to be really important for me, and that manifests through my music that I make and through speaking in general about things uh, that I'm attracted to. And exchange is more of this one-on-one kind of back and forth energy that I have with people, where I'm really connecting one-on-one. And so I really need those one-on-one connections to feel fulfilled in my life. So I need to nurture those, so I can share myself with people one on one. So yeah, that's everything in my Michael chart. I have a Michael Teachings Resources document that I made. You can check on my channel. I have a Michael Teachings Resources video that goes into all the different stuff about Michael Teachings. I made a series of videos about this stuff. So if you don't know about it, you can check out my channel and learn more about yourself through it. If you don't have a chart already, which you can get from Shepherd Hoodwin at shepherdhoodwin.com, he channels charts for $111 currently. You can get your whole chart that looks like this from him. But I also have 4 tests that I made. One's for the role, one's the soul age, one's the goal, and one is the obstacle. So you can take all 4 of those tests to figure out the main important things from Michael Teachings that you need to pay attention to if you want to find out some of your stuff for free. And so you can do that on my link tree, which I'll put in my discussion in my description of this video. And so you can check that out to figure out your own stuff for this. But I would definitely recommend getting a chart channeled from Shepherd Hoodwin if you want to get a whole chart like I have here. So overall, what I could say about me in terms of what this chart says is that I'm a scholar overall. So I got this studying knowledge focus aspect of myself. I got the creative element with the sage and artisan. So the expression is really big, especially with the expression need. So a lot of the creative element tied with my scholar energy is really focused on both being a teacher in terms of providing information and knowledge, but also communicating that in a creative way, and also exploring the arts is really big for me. I have the energy orientation, which is and my physical moving centering, which is more of this energetic aspect of things that I'm really big on exploring. And I think that really ties into my experience with manic episodes and all the energy that I experience in those. And that's really dominant in my experience. And I'm really aware of my body and the energy. So that's a really big part of it. My dominance goal makes me a leader, especially with having this Saturnian body type to support that in the leadership. So a big theme for me in this life. And I got the Stoic and caution. So I'm focused more on the internal world, and I'm cautious about how I go about things. And I'm in the mature soul age. So my lessons overall are about emotions, my deeper sense of myself, and being in touch with myself and the spiritual domain of things, and connecting to other people and nurturing the relationships that I have. So yeah, and then I have the salvation global job. So I'm spiritual counseling is probably something overall that I resonate with really strongly, and so I really want to help people in that way to heal them and move them onto the correct spiritual path for them in terms of their own evolution, and that's a big drive for me. So yeah, lots of really important information in here that I learned by studying the system. So it's a really important system, I would say, out of all different systems to check out. But yeah, so that's my Michael chart.